Sorry,
Want to
just
thank,
stand by.
oh, are you back?
Nope, we're just having some technical difficulties. The Wi-Fi over here
Okay.
is not that great.
Oh dear. Okay. So, you mind if I ask you a question while you were waiting for the fixing up?
Of
Just for
course.
Phil? Okay. So,
All right, I'm back.
oh, she's back.
Oh,
All right, then we don't have to Phil.
we're
All right,
back.
Lydia. Excellent. Make sure you're back on. You have your amplify my voice is turned back on.
Okay. All right, so there we go. One of the limitations is college Wi-Fi. So I just wanted to explain what lab-based scenarios encompasses. Basically, what we mean by that is we go into a lab where we simulate a patient condition or a situation. We use mannequins for this, or we use actors, and we use usually equipment similar to what we would use on the road, and sometimes replica. So that's what we mean by lab-based. So Andrew's just going to talk to you a little bit about the method.
Okay, so the method to our studies. So we randomly selected 10 second-year Georgian College paramedic students to participate and volunteer in our study. So the 10 participants were separated into 2 groups of 5. So each of the participants will complete 2 conceptually comparable scenarios, once in virtual reality and the other in the traditional lab-based simulation, as Lydia was saying before, using either an actor or a mannequin and using bags that are simulated to what we would use in the actual paramedic field. So the scenario, which took place in the program called VR Patients, the scenario included a 70-year-old male that was short of breath. The patient was suffering from an asthma exacerbation, so he did something physical that made his asthma condition much worse and made him short of breath. And we were looking for patients to treat with salbutamol or Ventolin, those little blue puffers that a lot of people carry when they have asthma. So we were looking for them to treat with that. So each participant from the first group started with, or one participant from the first group started with the virtual reality scenario, then moved on to the lab-based scenario. The first person from the second group started with the lab-based scenario and moved on to the virtual reality scenario. The order in which the participants made their assessments and treatments were conducted, or when they were conducted, was evaluated for each scenario. So when they did each assessment was critiqued. So we were studying to see whether or not participants followed the same procedure and assessment order in each scenario. So whether they did the same assessment at the same time in virtual reality and lab-based scenarios. So by comparing whether or not a participant carried out a certain skill at the same time in each scenario, it can demonstrate, and it demonstrated that both virtual reality and lab-based scenarios can be used together and worked with in conjunction. And it doesn't actually skew the participants off from their originally taught procedural skills. So it can actually show us that it can be used together to solidify our already taught and known skills rather than skew us from what we've already been taught. And then following each scenario, our participants were asked to complete a short survey. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our qualitative survey results. So we split it into qualitative and quantitative study results. So we'll talk a little bit about the qualitative survey results first. So we formatted 2 tables to represent the results of the surveys that were completed by each participant after they completed each scenario. We have the results. Sorry, Rob, if you can go to the next slide. I think a couple more. There's going to be a table showing our qualitative results. If not, I'll just explain it. So we divided our results into 2 different tables, one comparing our results from the lab-based scenario, and then one comparing from the virtual reality scenario. So our survey used a 5-point Likert scale with answers ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And our survey wanted to assess the ability of each scenario for participants to form an initial impression of the patient, whether or not they could view their environment well, whether or not they could hear the patient's clinical presentation, so whether or not they can actually hear our patient wheezing and having difficulty breathing. We wanted to see if they agreed with the ability to visualize the patient's presentation, their ability to actually practice procedural skills, so use that tactile element of it, whether they can perform a primary survey, a secondary survey, which are just basically visualizing and assessing our patient to see if they have a pulse, if they're breathing, if they're alert, things like that. And we wanted to see if they agreed that either the virtual reality or the lab-based simulation allowed them to develop a differential diagnosis. So basically, whether they could figure out that our patient had asthma. And we wanted to see that it allowed participants the ability to strengthen their practice as a student, to get them more comfortable with what we're going to be learning about and what we're going to be practicing on the road. So that's basically what our survey was all about, seeing whether or not they agreed virtual reality was helpful in certain aspects or whether it wasn't helpful in certain ways, and same questions with the lab-based scenarios. So now we're going to go on to Lydia, and she's going to talk a little bit about our results.
Sure. So this is just another visual representation of the quantitative results. You can see here that it's actually pretty good. It shows you where you get a visual impression that where one method has shortfalls, then the other one fills it in. Rob, if you could actually just go back to the previous slide, which is demonstrative of our quantitative results. So just while he's doing that, I'll start explaining it. So for the quantitative results, we actually have a scenario comparison chart, which you'll see on the left in a moment. So here we assess the percent of similarity of the order of skill performed between the two scenarios. So for each individual participant, we compared the way they did a lab-based scenario to the way they did a VR-based scenario, and how they performed each skill and what order they did it in. So the similarity, sorry, it's not up there right now, but the similarity, the highest percent of similarity was actually 62.5%. So, and then on the right, it would be, we have our skill comparison results. So here we actually assess the percentage of similarity in which all the participants combined, which specific skills were performed between the two scenarios across all 10. And again, we had a really good result from that. So, Rob, if you could move on the slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So the results, the majority of participants found that VR was really helpful for visual and auditory learning. They were able to get a really good general impression of the patient's presentation, just because they can look at them rather than being told by someone, you see your patient's pale or you see your patient's diaphoretic. They can actually see what the patient looks like. We were able to auscultate this patient, so we could use our stethoscope, put it on their chest, actually hear what the lung sounds would be, which again, in a lab-based scenario, you're told what it sounds like, you don't actually hear it. So then when you get out on the road, you're hearing sounds for the first time and you're not always quite sure what they are, right, Andrea? Like it's,
yes,
that's crackles. I've never actually heard it before, so it was really helpful for that, for hearing breath sounds. So as far as the results go, the scene safety we had was 80% similar, which is really great. When we first walk into a scenario, we want to see if it's safe for us, if it's safe for our patient, if it's safe for our partner. We were able to do that in both formats. And again, the primary survey was really great. It was 50% similarity, which is really important because that's our main assessment that we do when we first see a patient. So half of the participants had 50% or greater similarity between the two types of scenario. So this is really great because it demonstrates the potential to use them in conjunction with one another. At the bottom of the survey, we did have some questions just so that people could write their comments. The main feedback we got from that area was that the lab-based scenario, they said the acting needed to be more realistic. So I guess that's something, because we do lab scenarios all the time, you get fatigued by them and you kind of do it half-heartedly eventually, and the acting's not very good, so you don't really get a good interaction with the patient. A bit of criticism we did get back about the VR was that they didn't enable good communication with the patient. Part of this is the software we were using. The way you spoke to the patient was through a drop-down list. There was only about 8 questions on that list that you could ask the patient, and often when you ask them an open-ended question, you'd get a yes or a no. So that didn't quite work for us, because when we're talking to a patient, we need to get a really good history from them. And all the participants felt that that was something that could be improved. Just as a side note, one thing we did find, we were doing the 2 types of scenario at the same time. For the virtual reality scenario and the lab, they're starting exactly at the same time. Virtual reality, they were finishing much quicker, while we were still trying to tidy up the lab and do all the things that we need to do to get reset for the next one. So that was one main thing, was it was really much less time consuming to do the VR.
It appears that their Wi-Fi has won again.
Oh, sorry guys, just some technical difficulties again.
Okay. All right.
Any questions so far that I could answer,
Oh,
if anything's
I'm back.
confusing? Oh, she's back again.
She's back. Okay.
Oh, I'm already outside. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're back on megaphone. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So some of the limitations that we wanted to discuss that we found through the research. So one of the main ones was the actual software that we used, the design. It didn't provide a lot of scenario options, and the options that did allow us to use them, it was kind of limiting. There wasn't a lot of leeway for the actual participants. They weren't able to ask their own questions. There were set tasks already within the scenario, rather than letting them have an assessment that guided them and take them down a certain path of treatment. So, for example, some of our participants, when they first examined the patient, they thought, I think this might actually be chest pain. I want to give aspirin. But they couldn't, because the scenario was already dictated to be a breathing scenario. So they're not then able to learn from their own mistakes, which is a really valuable learning tool that they're going to be missing out on. The sample size obviously was quite small. We only had 10 participants. We'd obviously like to be able to do more research with more participants. Lack of VR experience is one of the limitations as well, because people only had 15 minutes to train with the equipment, which didn't allow them to really be comfortable with it. We spent hours in the lab practicing, so that's a format which they're very, very familiar with already. And it, that could also cause a bit of added stress because they're not used to the format. So instead of just concentrating on assessing their patient and treating them, they're instead stressing about actually using the equipment itself. And also, the student's ability to comprehend the VR technology varies from person to person. So some people are instantly very comfortable with it, but there's others like it's a different learning curve. So that might have caused some discrepancy in our results. Lastly, student disinterest could be one of the limitations. We were in a period of time where we were not the only group of students doing research, and people were getting fatigued, I think, with doing various scenarios, because we were all trying to help each other out, doing all different research projects, and I think some people get quite tired with it. The last thing was the discrepancy between the evaluators. So we did have 2 different professors doing the marking for each scenario type, and they may have just decided that different, they had a different perception of when a skill is done and when they would have checked it off as being completed. although we did try and like limit that as much as we could. So Andrea is going to talk to you about our conclusions.
Okay, so again, the whole purpose of this study was to determine whether or not virtual reality can be used in conjunction with our lab-based scenario simulation. So whether or not it can help solidify students' skills and comfortability with just patient assessment, patient treating, everything like that. So in conclusion, the results of our study suggest that virtual reality is a valuable tool that can be used in conjunction with lab-based scenario simulation. So virtual reality simulation showed increased perception of patient assessments, as well as similar or equal performance in the subsequent lab-based scenario. So following the corrections of the limitations that Lydia was just currently talking about, virtual reality should be implemented into the education of future paramedic students, as it can help solidify our skills and our abilities to make good patient assessments, good patient treatment plans, and all together become a strong, well-rounded paramedic. So what questions do you guys have for us? If there are any.
First of all, thanks everyone. I'm Rob Terry. I'm one of the instructors with the paramedic program, and with us as well as Jonathan Lee, who's one of the other educators at Georgian College. I'm going to take a look at my host panel and see if anyone has any hands raised. Any questions, anybody?
If anyone needs any clarification on any of the lingo that we use, I know we're so used to medical abbreviations and terms. I don't know if you were pretty clear with any of that.
I think we have a fairly small group. I can probably just unmute the group unless Laurel thinks otherwise.
No, that's not a good idea right now, but, in a moment, maybe. I just want to, I mean, there's so many things that are absolutely fascinating here. And to real application in the real world, how far are we? What really needs to happen? And what are the next steps based on your research?
Okay, well, basically the whole thing with virtual reality and the real world, one thing that's super similar between them is the visualization and the auditory part of it. So basically what we want from virtual reality is to give participants the ability to actually visualize what they're going to see in the real world and be able to listen to what we're going to hear in the real world, because a lot of the times through even like hospital clinicals that we go through or ride out, sometimes we don't get the chance to actually hear what we're studying. So if virtual reality can potentially allow us to almost become one step ahead before we go into the real world, that's what we're basically hoping for. And throughout more development and studies and more research and hopefully, like I said, better developments, hopefully they can come up with programs that allow us to experience that.
Yeah, essentially we would need a lot more scenarios to exist for us to gain from, because we go through them pretty quickly. Like I said, they're not time consuming, which is great for education, but we would need multiple different clinical presentations of patients, and we would need them to be able to look maybe even a bit more interactive. Like if you could have someone being the patient rather than like a drop down list of questions, if you could actually talk to a real human, get someone to come in and act as a patient, that's one idea. Yeah, I think just more really. If anyone wants to make us some more, that would be great.
Now, the Alvin Wayne Graylin's keynote talked about yesterday was just absolutely amazing, about looking at scalability and how they, set up many experimental scenarios where it took like 3 weeks to set it up, and the next time it took a week to set it up, and the next time it took like 30 minutes. How do you think that you can scale this to make it more productive, to make it really push out easier?
I think that might be a question for Rob.
Yeah, Rel, are you talking about from a software development perspective?
Oh,
I don't know if she can hear you.
what?
you able
No,
to hear me?
sorry. Yeah, I know you cut out for a second for me. I'm sorry. Repeat it.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my question was, are you talking about from a software development perspective, scale up?
Not just software, but the whole production. I mean, he was talking about how you have all the equipment, you have all the bits, you have all the pieces, you got to move the people into them, you got to do this. And I'm just wondering if you've given any thought in your research to the next time it's done to really speed up that process.
Yeah, I'm not sure about speeding up the process, but the limitations we're facing right now with the number of scenarios developed in virtual reality. So that's a big piece of it. From an analog perspective, the students are going through lots of scenarios, but from a VR perspective, we just haven't come across a company that has a sufficient number of scenarios for students to get some serious value out of them at this point. But there is one company, the company that developed these, the scenarios that the students were working with, that is developing a whole series of new scenarios, and we're going to be beta testing them in the coming year.
Very cool. And how about you individually? What's going on? Where is this research going to take you? What's next?
For us individually, I hope that this project can lead to, like we were talking about before, better development and better scenario practice for the future to come. Because even though we're going to be done and hopefully working by the time that software comes out, we hope that this will hopefully be implemented into the education and help future medics and future students progress faster and essentially better in their skills and practice. So that's just what I hope to get out of this research. And I hope that eventually, as the new software comes out and more scenarios are there, more detailed, hopefully they take into consideration any input that that developers have acquired, that they'll be able to be implemented into paramedic education and help further education as well and for students.
Yeah, and Georgian College really encourages student research. So, you know, the year below us, they might continue on our research project. They might try and add to it with more participants. But something we can carry forward as well, as Andrew was saying, we're hoping to go into the paramedic field. Once we're in there, there's always continued education. Paramedicine is something that's continually developing all the time.
Very true.
And this is something that we could, you know, try and also implement into the actual services once we're a part of them. They're all very forward thinking, and I think this is something that they might see could add value.
And where's your careers going?
Well, I hope.
Paramedic.
Yeah, exactly. We're hoping to get hired and work as a paramedic anywhere we can. Basically, we don't really have a preference.
Yeah, and to continue, you know, the research and to obviously to continue education, but I don't know.
Oh,
Of course.
There, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I remember the days, you know.
So
Oh,
Wi-Fi
no.
connection
Oh.
in
There,
that corner of the
she's
room.
back.
There you are.
Is she
She's
back?
back, yay.
I'm back.
All right, you want to finish that sentence?
Sure. Oh, what have I done?
You're okay. You're still on the stage.
Yay.
There we go. Yeah, I was just saying, you know, I want to continue my education. You know, once I'm hired, I still want to continue. I want to do a degree in public health and, you know, hopefully continue to carry on my research and, you know, maybe virtual reality part of.
But I believe
Well,
that is it for us, unless
I think-
anyone has any other questions.
Fantastic. Rob, you want to sum it up and
Will
tell
do.
us just really quickly about their program and what they're going through and what's enabled with it, and then we'll round it up?
Sure, yeah. So there are three paramedic levels, primary care, which is a 2-year entry-level program, which is the one that Lydia and Andrea will be graduating from shortly. And then there's an advanced care program, which is a 3rd year, and then a critical care level, which is a 4th year. And so our plan is to continue to use virtual reality for both patient simulation, for teaching empathy, and for doing some online education as well. Jonathan Lee, who's sitting in the front of the audience, is a critical care paramedic who specializes in pediatrics, so in children. And he teaches in our paramedic program and assisted with the research project as well. And so, I think we see the potential in students be able to reinforce learning and maybe even to accelerate learning in VR-based simulation. So we're quite excited about it.
Fantastic. All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Oh, thank you. Big round of applause for these amazing students that are in this groundbreaking, record-breaking conference. How brave. Seriously, incredibly brave. And Rob, thank you.
And Laurel, thanks so much for organizing this incredible event. It's just fantastic.
Thank you. This is just, it's an honor and a privilege. I cannot tell you how amazing it is. And I want to recommend all of you, please, as long as your Wi-Fi holds up, just head on down, right in back there. There's a teleporter over by the globe that takes you to our social space. So if you want to meet these amazing students and fantastic professor here, to learn more about these kind of paramedic programs, my niece is in a new paramedic program, and she found out that you guys were coming, and she wanted to be here. She couldn't because she has a test right now. But she's in a paramedic program in Washington State, and she is so beside herself because she loves VR. Whenever she comes to visit me, because she's a Mac person, she just goes bananas with the VR stuff. So she wants to be in your program really badly. And
awesome.
So
well, she can find all my lessons on Spotify.
Excellent. I will make sure that she knows. That's good to know on Spotify.
And my videos on YouTube. So
all right, there you go. And I expect you guys will do that too. So thank you all, and head on into the social space, and we're going to get ready for the next event that's coming up in just a moment. Sorry I don't have it on my screen, but you can check the events list and here in AltSpace and find out what's next. All right. Rocket, thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I can't. I don't have 2D.
Yeah. All you can do is do head bopping.
Sorry, my mic was muted at the same time, so here I'm saying high five and you can even hear me.
Head bop.
Okay, we heading out?
All right. Yay.
I'll
Head
follow you,
down
Rob.
there, and we'll get this set up, and I'm going to reset the space here for the next event that's coming up. Well done.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Hi.
Just a question for you very quickly.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm getting ready for my session in about half an hour or so.
Yes.
The slides, which
yes.
I sent to you, will they be accessible, and how does it work?
Yes, it is. So,
Oh, it's over here. There it is.
Okay, hang on. Okay, his microphone will go
Yeah,
off in a
just
second.
walk
All
right into it or point at it and click.
I'm looking for them right now. I had too many screens in front of me. Let me see if I can find the slides here. Okay.
Thank you.
Volunteers. And you're in this space? No, let's see. No, you were in. I suddenly can't see.
Hello, 3 hours in now.
All right, there's Shafi. All right, let me make sure where you. Oh,
Yeah, I've got one.
hang on a second. We're having some very fun slide spreadsheet hell. There you are. Okay.
I've got
Yes, you're in this space coming up right here. So I just wanted to double check now. Let me get your slides
first learning
and let me copy them in. Oh, good, you did them. Oh, bless you. So, all right, I'm going to be resetting the space. I'm resetting the space, so everybody hold on to your virtual cute buns. So please hang in there. We're going to be, if you do get bounced out, please come on back in. Here we go. Whoops, there. Nope, that's the wrong one.
Yes, I'm gonna get pot lube. I've got 20 more
Is it?
minutes before the next.
Nope, that's not the right one. Oh, you didn't. Okay. All right.
I'm on the roof, so.
Okay, Shafi, are you back?
I'm back.
There.
I'm here. Perfect.
You're back.
That looks
Okay.
like my slides. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be controlling them, right?
Yeah. By what? My computer, right? Which is
The-
on
your-
slides.com.
Right, but you didn't put it into our slides.com account.
No, I sent it to you.
Yes,
you do it
but-
from my account.
Yes, yeah, I have no control over it when it's not our
Okay.
account.
Yeah, no, I can do it from my account. And I can,
Okay,
let me just,
and so you can
yeah,
either do it in your open browser,
yeah.
right on your
That's what I was
device.
going to do. Let me just
Okay, then, all right,
Yeah.
so make sure you log in. Link,
What are we doing here? 'Cause I heard
did you read when you
paramedic
read?
stuff.
Well, no, that one just finished.
Okay.
Yes, that one just finished.
Okay, well, I'll be here. So is that
Okay.
Are you that guy?
And so could you just hold on? We're setting up the next person to speak. And so, oops, we're getting an echo here from Duchess. Let me mute her. Okay, there you go. All right. Okay. Shoo.
You want to say something cool? I can do some cool stuff.
No, thank you. No, thank you. We're getting, yeah. Oh, beautiful. All right. So we're waiting for our next speaker to line up. So for those of you who are waiting, we have the amazing Professor Shafi Ahmed is going to be here talking about VR and global medical education. I am so excited about this. And fantastic stuff. Just love it.
So I think I'm controlling it now.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
it's changing. I can see it. So come on up here on the stage.
Okay.
Just teleport up. There you go. You have full range. Make sure you're on. And then we have some time before it happens, so you can
Yes.
just relax for a few minutes, or I can interview you, or whatever you want to have happen. It will happen. We have all kinds of fun things that can happen here.
And well, congratulations, by the way, Lorraine. What an amazing job you're doing. Honestly, I can't imagine how much effort this requires.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, I need to just,
Honestly.
yeah, okay. It is, it's an amazing event, and we're just kind of stunned, absolutely stunned by it. And so I have to just let the staff know what's going on here, the backup, all the volunteers.
Sure. Hello, everyone.
Volunteer.
Good to
So I'm
see you.
hearing, I'm hearing people pouring water. I'm hearing people doing all kinds of background noises.
So we have
Well,
Gary, Logan Love. Hi, Gary.
hey, hi everybody,
Monkey
hi.
Fun. I like that name. Hi, Monkey Fun. Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Camera person over there.
Yeah, the camera person is live streaming and recording, so I love it. Yeah.
Ah,
So
love that. And Duchess. Hi, Duchess.
Hold on.
all
That's
right,
good, kids.
thank you. Hi. Hi, how are you doing? So I thought
I'm
maybe
great.
we'd just take this moment here, if everybody's okay about that. Everybody can find a nice comfy seat and behave nicely, as I love. We've had the great audiences here. So, so Shafi, I would like, tell me, let's talk about some things that are not in your slides.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, so where is the future of global medicine? First of all, how did you come to VR? That's what I want to know first. How did you come to VR? as a part of
As-
doing this?
A really good question. So obviously, as a doctor, as a surgeon, I also have a role in education for many years. So one of my roles was I was associate dean at the medical school, and I've been teaching students for the last 20 years. And I've been thinking about what's the next level of education, both for undergrad and medical students, and also for postgraduate surgical trainees. And I was trying to look for different ways of sharing knowledge, but not just on a classroom level, but on a global level. A lot of work I do is global. I go to a lot of countries, work with different governments and universities and colleges and etc. Trying to think, how do we reimagine healthcare of the future? So that's kind of the background. So obviously, I think what it is, I think the technology came out at the right time for me, right time, right place. I was looking for a solution. And then we kind of experimented right at the beginning with 360 videos, in terms of cameras. I remember going back, one of my colleagues I was working with actually did the first 360 video of the Hong Kong riots, if you recall back, I don't know, 6 years ago. And he actually got a bunch of GoPro cameras together. If you go to see that whole 360 video, he did that himself. Got some GoPro cameras, stitched together the video, which took weeks on end to produce the final thing. So we got together and we would think about how do we change the way we teach surgery, for example. And then we initially, again, got some GoPro cameras on a 3D printed kind of stack and just did the very first video to see what it looked like. We stitched together using the old software, of course, took ages. And it worked well. Then we did the first one on YouTube a while ago and first came out to the 360 platform to experiment. And we realized actually there was huge value in this kind of learning, the immersive learning, adding the whole, if you look at the operating theatre as a whole, it added the communication skills, watching the team working around you, getting much more of an immersive experience rather than a 2D interface. And I thought, okay, well, how do we expand that, make it more global, share the training and create a platform? And that's kind of what stimulated my interest. And prior to that, I'd been using Google Glass and other technologies, again, to live stream training, whether it's an operation or clinical skills, for more people to access that knowledge. So that was kind of the remit, and I met the right people at the right time who are interested in the AR/VR space, who are pioneers in that field in different disciplines, and then we kind of formed a company called Medical Realities, and since then we've been pushing the VR to its maximum. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing. Now, there is where it went, how far it's come, and there's where it's going. So what, where do you think this is really, really going compared to where it's really, really been?
Good question. So if you'd asked me 2 years ago that question, I'd been worried because what we had was an industry in VR driven by hardware. It's the headsets, expensive or tethered, and there's a lot of hardware being driven by a lot of companies. I thought the VR was going to be questionable, whether it would survive or not long term. Now, about 18 months ago, what happened, we saw a change in medicine, and that was VR therapy. We suddenly saw people like Brennan Spiegel from Cedar Sinai and Diane Juris from Holland actually in clinical trials on behavior disorders, on dementia, on cognitive disorders. Suddenly, we're seeing the use cases. Actually, therapy, I think, will drive the education because then it becomes more powerful. And the other thing I've noticed, of course, is content. We've been hardware-driven so long, what's missing was the content. And now we're seeing a lot of content coming through. And that's changing because people want to see the use cases. And now we're seeing companies like OssoVR and others who actually already put these into practice, so it becomes a part of residency programs, actual curriculum. And suddenly we're seeing actually the penetration, the translation of the VR into real practice. So whether that's simulation or training, I'd say that the future is now very optimistic. I can see that VR will certainly change the way you train the future generation of doctors. So we're in a good space, I think.
I think so. Now, I am hearing that the surgeons that were trained in using VR lack some precision. Is there anything that is compensating for all of that now?
So I think what VR allows is to recreate, simulate an operation in steps to showcase things step-by-step approach. It doesn't replace real surgery, okay? It doesn't replace cadaveric work. It augments, it helps and supports. So you're learning processes, you're learning how to operate in an immersive environment, and I think that will help us shorten the training required. So, for example, in the past, Laurel, we used to go straight into the operating theatre and train. Now I think what happened is that you spend more time in VR doing simulation, and then once you've fulfilled certain criterion and passed certain tests or been certificated, then you'll be allowed to the operating theatre. That's why I think it's going to happen going forward, which makes sense. It augments, it supports, it assists the training program, making it more effective. That's why I see the VR role at the moment. But I'm not talking about precision. I'm more worried about the training, the validation that VR can offer. And we know, if you look at the amazing reports, which I'm sure you're aware of, it suggests that we retain 80% more knowledge in VR compared to traditional online or e-learning platforms or simulation. So that in itself is going to revolutionize the way we teach and for people to retain the knowledge.
Now, there's a part of me, okay, so I'm trying to think of how I want to do this. So one of my best friends, when I first showed her VR, there was this, we're talking about like 4 or 5 years ago, there was this app that took you through the blood supply and into the human heart, and she just, the brain cells exploded. She absolutely, she literally fell off the chair, trying to twist her head around to see, oh, look at that, oh, now we're here, and then she fell off. So what made me realize is that medicine now, through apps like that, now that's not high training, but it's becoming more accessible. And as I look at it, I'm seeing that is a way to treat people in Antarctica, in far distant places, to be able to heal, to treat themselves by simulation and training. So have you been working with what's going on with that to bring the higher, we're not talking about doing cancer surgery, but I don't know. What do you see bringing to the consumer level?
Good idea. So look, the one thing is about the global health agenda, and I'll talk a little about that in my talk, but I've been working with people in Africa, in Rwanda and other places, for example, bringing in surgical operations, like, for example, amputations and that kind of thing, which works really well, to democratize the education system. So I think this whole telemedicine stroke, VR stroke, remoteness is going to be a revolutionized way we democratize the training for people. So that's what I see happening on a global level. And I'm quite excited by that, because suddenly we're seeing real use cases where people around the world, irrespective of their origin or their geography or their finance, can suddenly get world-class education, which I think we all agree with is a kind of fundamental right for everybody.
Absolutely.
I think VR is powerful in that sense. I like this one together. I mean, we've got a whole room of people here together from all parts of the world, and suddenly that knowledge sharing is going to be so powerful and uniquely powerful in the setting. All we've got to do is figure out the validation for it to ensure the learning that we create has research, has science behind it, is validated compared to traditional methods of learning, which I think that's the next step for us, to produce the evidence, if you like, that VR is here to stay, and actually it has huge merit.
I'm just absolutely dazzled by this. And with your students, what are you finding at the student level that is really transformative when they're using this? I mean, right down to the very basics. Where are you seeing the most benefit?
Okay, so tell you. So first of all, as you know, as soon as you put VR headset on, there's kind of wow factor behind it.
Oh yes.
And once you, but that lasts it lasts 5 minutes, right? If that,
True.
Right? And then the number 2 wears off, right?
Yeah. If I see one more, give me a fist bump thing, it's like, after 5 minutes we're done.
Yeah, exactly. So when we first started, it was saying, how do we get over that hurdle of the wow factor coming in? And say, actually, it's much more than the wow factor. Where is that learning. So what we've done over the years, and I'll show you the slides later, is how do you create learning in VR? What does it look like? Okay, it's okay showing a video. It's okay doing some CG animation. What is that powerful learning mechanism they're trying to engage? And I'll show you in our platform what we've done. So what I'm seeing our medical students really enjoy is we have something called objective structured clinical examination, the OSCEs, which are kind of universal the way we teach people. And so we create that whole environment in 360. So the students, for example, who sit in go to an exam in this arrangement, feel scared, feel worried, of course, there's a bit of pressure because they've been examined in this whole segment. By creating that experience in 360 and CGI, suddenly it takes away some of the enigma. They practice and practice. So by the time they actually come to the exam, they're much better off. And we're just doing some research around that, showing how useful that is. Yeah, because you add to, it's allowing the element
wonderful.
of VR. Yeah, and I think it works in that scenario.
That's wonderful. And because, you know, like everything, practice makes perfect. And, you know, that makes a huge difference when they have that opportunity. So ever through the portal, if you could please cancel it right away, just hit it and hit end, or you'd be kicked out of the event, and possibly other ones. Just letting you know, no portals and events. Sorry, there's a little room discipline here. So we have just a few more minutes before I want to give just people some time to mill around and talk before you start up. But I just wanted, before you, because you haven't even started your presentation, I've already been picking your brain. I appreciate this extra time. Hopefully your battery's going to hold. I hope all your batteries
I've
hold.
just checked. My son's just checked, and I'm at 57%, so I'm good. I'm all right.
Yeah. So what I want to know is, what devices are you guys using, and what do you recommend for the students? Is the Quest?
What a question!
Is
It's
the
a great
Go?
question.
The great technology question, yeah. And I'm gonna
Yeah,
fix the slides.
that's a really good question, Lauren. I know
Okay.
when we first started, we used every platform. Our platform was available on HTC Vive, on Oculus, on all the phone mobile devices, Daydream and Android, and even iOS we put it on. Also, as time goes on, I've advised people to get the Oculus Go currently, because it just seems simple, it's cheap, it's affordable, it's good entry into VR, it's standalone device, it's not tethered, it's just perfect. Because what you want engagement is simplest method, not too complicated, right? And I think Go works really well for that, and it's the right price point. Obviously, I prefer the Oculus Quest, which I'm using at the moment, which I think is what I would like people to go on to, because obviously it has much more capability for the degrees of movement around the space. It's more powerful. So with the Go and the Quest, which is what I think would be the go-to, and I think they're the ones long-term will be disseminated across most medical schools and hospitals.
Yeah, which breaks my heart, because now they're not. Oculus is no longer supporting the Go for Enterprise.
Of course,
They're
I know, yes,
pushing
of course.
everything into Quest, and so I think that's going to give much more thing. And I still have a little hope that mixed reality, you know, the real, you know, MR devices that allow us to do both, you know, combining that AR and the XR experience, I think is, you know, I want that. Don't you all want that? Want to have that more realistic, so that we have inclusive, but we also include the rest of the world. You know, I think inclusive is, I mean, this is me on my little soapbox. You know, when you have an immersive environment, it tends to demersify you from the real world, and I think we need a little of both sometimes in the right places. So, you know, just part of the combination. All right, so officially, this is starting in 6 minutes, so I'm going to unmute everybody. Thank you, everybody. Round of applause for this extra time. Do some Q&A with Professor. I've been talking so much today, and I need to know. Shafi Ahmed, and his presentation is coming up next. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and thank you again for all your time. I appreciate this. All right.
And thank you, Laura, for your hard work.
So I'd like you to move the slides again to make sure you have control.
Let me just make sure my computer's working.
There you go. Do you Beautiful.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
working.
And then take a deep breath, and you have about 2.5, 3 minutes to just take a deep breath, and everybody, you can
Sure.
talk among yourselves. Good. I'm just going to mute myself for just a second and check in with my team. I'll be right back.
Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
Yeah, too quiet to be on mute.
Yeah, very quiet.
Got you here, I think, probably 2 hours now.
All right.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're excited. Oh, I'm so excited. That was a good warm-up. So we are here with Professor Shafi Ahmed, who's going to be talking about the global medicine and the realities of what's going on with all of this technology. And I am so proud and excited to have you be here and just share your vast knowledge with everyone. So I'm going to get out of your way, and everybody have a round of applause for our wonderful Professor Ahmed. And take it away. It's all yours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Laurel. And thank you very much for the invitation to come and speak. And thank you to the whole team for putting on such an amazing show. Honestly, I've been spending a little time in the last couple of days here, and the effort that's gone to do this, I can't even describe. So well done on making it happen and work. So thanks for that. So hi, everybody. Can you give me a wave? Lovely. Nice to meet you all. I'm hoping you can hear me adequately. Great, thank you for that. So listen, so I've been asked to, talking a bit about VR and medical education. I've been in this space for a little while now, trying to figure out what that might look like. And I'll share some of my experiences and where we've come from and where we're heading towards. So I'm just going to start showing you the slides in a second. And we just go, first of all, it's this one. So first of all, there. So this is a picture you would have seen probably when you search VR on the net. So this picture here that you've seen, let me show you the story first of all, how that picture came into being. So this is me actually in a VR headset, in the old VR1, which some of you may have heard of before, that came out a while ago, before Samsung. And we were playing around with cameras, GoPro cameras, trying to create a 360 environment back in 2015, a long time ago, and 14, when it's at the beginning of this whole cycle of VR. And we were doing an operation, and I was kind of had the VR headset to one side, and the photographer, the guy we're working with, said, "Look, we're doing a 360 video. Can you put a headset on? Let's take a picture," right? So I put it on during the operation, and he took a picture which became iconic in VR. The question people ask me, of course, is how do you operate the VR headset on? Of course, I don't, right? It's actually a picture we took at the time to reflect the operation. Hiya. So that's the first thing I'd say about the entrance into VR. Let's go a bit more about me and where I work. So I'm a cancer surgeon working in London at the Royal London Hospital, which is based in the East End, which is a few miles from where I live. I also work at St Bartholomew's Hospital. And I know that you're all global here. Everyone's come from different parts of the world, all converging for the conference. This is our hospital, St Bartholomew's. And what you can see, of course, is that it's an old hospital. It was founded, let's go to the right of it. There we are. I'll go to the site here. It was founded in 1123. So you can imagine this is an old hospital with almost 900 years of experience. And it's famous. In the hospital, we found the circulation blood, for example. We discovered Parkinson's disease. We found many diseases that we describe now in the medical literature. So we come from a very historical, traditional medical school hospital. And so the question for me is going back 900 years ago, where do we go forward? And how do we embrace technology innovation? A lot of my work is global. I spend a lot of my time traveling, and I've probably been to over 35 countries in the last 3 years, working with governments, colleges, universities, to think about education, but also the digital transformation of health. And VR becomes one part of that entire cycle, of course. And so that's what I've been working on for a number of years. And I'll share my experiences with you as we go forward. We all know that we're living through what's called the fourth industrial revolution, okay? And we look at VR. We look at this one technology, but in the midst of other technologies. So Klaus Schwab, who's the World Economic Forum chairman, about 4 years ago spoke at Davos and spoke about this fourth industrial age, i.e. lots of technologies coming together, converging at the same point of human existence. And I say to people, this is really the most exciting time to be alive in medicine. We have VR, we have immersive tech, we have AI, we have blockchain, nanobiotechnology, genomics, we have wearables, sensors, big data. We have so many things going on together which transform the way we teach and educate, but also the way we deliver healthcare. So it's important to think about VR in the context of this kind of convergence of technologies. Fast forward 4 years, he spoke about this concept of fourth industrial revolution. This year in Davos, the terminology is globalization. How do you use these technologies like VR to make the world a better place, to globalize, to transform, to disseminate, to disrupt, and ultimately to democratize healthcare and education? That's where we are. If you look at this graph here, this shows the problems we have in healthcare. The GDP for every country is going up. Healthcare costs are going up year on year. It's becoming unaffordable and inaccessible, okay? So one of the things about going around the world and speaking to governments, there's one commonality, and that is no one's got any more money, right? It's surprising, not really. No one's got more cash to throw at healthcare and education. That's the first slide that I want to share with you, because I think in context, VR might be one of the many solutions to this global problem. The other issue is this: the World Health Organization, looked at the human resources for health in 2030, i.e. the workforce. It concluded that we're going to be about 15 million health workers short by 2030. Can you imagine? Just to provide adequate health care for the world, we're going to be short by 50 million people going forward. At the same time, the costs are going up. We've got increasing elderly population, more chronic diseases, less people being trained. And for me, the surgery is a big problem. We think by 2030, we're going to be 1.2 million surgeons short to provide basic care. That means we have to perform over 150 million operations per year more to make healthcare fair and accessible. So those are the big numbers. And the question for me is, how do we solve those problems? As a clinician, as a surgeon, I have to think about the globe as a whole. How does my impact work in a different way? How do we train people quicker, faster, more efficiently, and better? And this is where I'll talk to you about what we've been doing the last few years. Let's go back. This picture here I'm showing you is a picture from about 60, 70 years ago, all right? This is Harvard Medical School, where they teach in a very much traditional manner many years ago. It's the surgeon or the anatomist being the center, and then it's being watched by a lot of people in the audience. Now, the learning here is pretty woeful. Imagine what the person at the top of that environment is seeing. Yeah, very little. He's watching from afar, not learning very much. And we've taught like this for many years. We haven't challenged it. We carry on teaching surgery in the same manner. My medical students, for example, come into the OR and they get ignored in the back of the room the entire time, on their smartphones, on social media. But actually, the learning is pretty woeful. So we're stuck with what I call dogma and tradition. We've got to disrupt the way we deliver that kind of teaching platform. So if we go forward slightly from that, say to about 30 or 40 years ago, you find nothing's changed. This is an operation being carried out in the US, actually. Imagine how many people can you get into the operating theatre from there? Now, imagine with coronavirus, would you be happy with so many people in the aseptic area? So again, we teach like this, thinking there's some kind of learning, which I call by diffusion and osmosis. And clearly, it doesn't work. So that's the paradigm. How do we change it? I'll tell you the story. So let's go back a few years. How many of you, hands up, remember the Google Glass? How many of you actually used one? Okay, so let's get back. So one of the things I was thinking about, how do we share knowledge on a much higher level? My inference was that we think about one-to-one teaching, one-to-two, one to maybe a classroom. What about I think about one to thousands of people around the world, sharing the knowledge by connecting people? And I gave a TED talk around connecting a billion minds. This is the mindset you have to think about. So I used Google Glass when it came out back in 2014 to share knowledge. And so what we did then was quite interesting. You'll like this. I did the first operation live using Google Glass. We streamed live an operation in this, I guess you could call it augmented reality platform, although early in its infancy. So I put the glass on, we reconfigured the software so I could transmit live through my eyes, through a video, and people around the world could watch the operation on their smartphone, on their iPad, on their computer. They could also put a text message in asking a question by text, which would then come up in the glass in the corner. I could see them, interact with them. So it's a new way of showcasing a surgical operation. And on that day, I taught 14,000 people in 118 countries simultaneously. Just by sharing a simple platform, connecting, and suddenly everyone with a smartphone could watch what was going on and then be in any part of the world learning from whoever. It's about this disrupting the way we think. So we create a whole platform around that, of learning. We create a whole platform around using Google Glass and other wearable technology. And that was my first experiment on using a new type of wearable. But that's kind of telemedicine. It's still remote, it's being distant, it's being far. We experimented with VR when it first came out. And what I did back in 2016 was take it one step further. I did the world's first VR operation, okay? And what we did, we put some 360 cameras on top of the, above the operation table. For the first time, we transmitted live. This was way before this was easily done. We had to create software, we had to create the hardware, the platform to make it work. I thought, what about bringing people to my operating theatre around the world? Rather than me traveling in telemedicine using augmented reality or Google Glass or telemedicine, what about bringing people in? So what we did at my hospital, I operated live on this patient with cancer. I thought, how do I share knowledge with cancer surgery? And we did the world's first operation. On that day, we wanted people to use their Google Cardboards. Remember Google Cardboard? We bought a bunch of Google Cardboards for the hospital. We bought about 1,000 Google Cardboards for everyone in the hospital, so they could all experience the experience, i.e. pharmacists, doctors, nurses, medical students, whoever. We created a free app on a smartphone, it was a mobile phone device, and then in the Google Cardboard, one click, and suddenly you can be transmitted in 360 into the operating field from anywhere around the world. So we did this, and of course it went viral. There's no question. I mean, we did really well with that. Let's go back. This operation was watched by 55,000 people in 140 countries and 4,000 cities live. The world went crazy. I had all the news outlets and media covering the story, and you'll see if you go back and look through the story about this. And suddenly it showed that we could, with a simple high-tech solution, but low cost using Google Cardboard, democratize education. That was kind of my experiment. Would people be interested? And they were engaging. Suddenly thought, okay, that's good. VR is good, 360 video is good, and how do we move on from that? So what we did next, we created a company called Medical Realities, and you go to our website, and we created the world's first learning platform for medicine. This is what the platform looks like. We spent a lot of time looking at the UI, UX, looking at how we navigate in VR, how we create CGI animation, how we use the 360 video. So there's not a question about 360 videos and their relevance. It's one part of the solution, okay? 360 video is good. It gets boring after the first 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, you have to create something within it. So what we've got in our platform is hotspots, is information in the 360 platform, real life video, as well as CGI animation, as well as learning platforms. So people go through a whole process of learning on our platform, and they do an exam at the end to validate their learning. My view was that if we can go into online platforms and create a whole end-to-end experience where you enter the VR platform, you go through learning objectives, you go through learning medium, CGI animation, and then into the video, which interacts, and then an exam at the end to validate. Your half an hour of learning can be done entirely in VR. That's what my interest was. How do you recreate learning in this environment? And so if you go to our platform, you can download it on any device. And please feedback and tell me what you feel about it. I'd love to get your opinions on that. And then we go to our next slide, which hopefully will come up. Oops. Let's see if it goes. Sorry, we're having problems with the next platform. Let's have a look. Let's see. Okay, next slide is on my slide, but not on there. That's what I can show you. Okay. Okay, next slides aren't loading for some reason. I'll tell you about what they are. It's a shame. Wonder if I can correct that. Next slide. Okay, so it's not loading as well as it could. Let's go back one, see if I can make it work again. I'm going to reload the slides very quickly.
Okay, so
let's just read the load. See if I can start presenting again. Just one second. Let me see if I can go back to my slides and see if it loads.
okay, so what? I'm sorry. How's this? You're changing slides.
Yeah, the slides are. So I'm changing the slides, but they're not coming up on my screen.
Okay, does everybody else see the slides?
Can you see the slides?
Give us some hearts if you see the
Okay.
slides. Everybody else can
Oh,
see
good,
them?
okay, good, that's good.
Okay.
All right, can you see that slide? Can you see the slide? Oh, perfect, okay, that's great, excellent. I'll go by what you say, that's perfect. I'll look at the laptop. So what you see here is our platform, okay? And there's a number of things we've done. So we've looked at the platform and created this learning environment. We've then created some teaching in basic sciences. So cadaveric teaching anatomy, we've done in VR with the voiceovers, with narration and hotspots, etc., explaining anatomy. We've created patient journeys. So the patients, one of the things that's forgotten about is the value of VR in patient education. A journey from the, say, from the ward to the operating theatre, replicating what it might be like. We're now creating a whole platform with Coloplast, which are a global stoma company. Stomas, of course, are colostomies that we create for surgery, and it has a huge impact on patient well-being. So we've created a whole platform for nurses and patients around education for stoma therapy. And then the OSCE we described earlier, the objective structured clinical examination, is a great model for VR training using 360 and hotspots and CGI, and we've released 60 of those modules already on our platform, which is available. So we create a whole kind of box of tricks, if you like, on different areas of training and learning. Of course, the next step is haptics. What we're seeing now is companies in VR doing really well with haptics, okay, and training. So also VR, based in America by Justin Barad and others, have created real training in simulation using mainly CGI simulation, creating a stepwise approach to training. What I'm pleased with, we're seeing now validation. We're seeing papers showing this is good for residency programs for training. It's been used in curriculum already around the world. And we're seeing now a kind of explosion of companies in VR and AR creating learning tools for surgeons as well as other professionals. And this is going to be the future of surgical training, of that there's no doubt. The other thing I thought I'd do is, okay, teaching is good, training is good. What about disrupting the doctor-patient relationship, the communication, okay? If you think about me seeing a doctor, me seeing a patient, I'm very expensive, okay? And actually, it's the most expensive part of any part of the group. So what we've created is mixed reality, was a way of connecting people. This was a HoloLens. Can you see the slide? Hands up, can you see the slide? Yeah, good, lovely. So this is what I did about a year and a half ago. I thought, if I'm in the operating theatre and I need someone to come to me to give advice rather than telephone call, can I call in avatars in real time? So what we did, we actually got avatars in real time from, so I was in London operating on a real live case. I put the HoloLens on. I got a surgeon from India and a surgeon from America as avatars in my space in the augmented world. We shared scans, images. We're suddenly discussing case in real time, okay? It's the first time this was done. And this was using the HoloLens, creating this whole vision around AR. This was look like blue polygonal images appearing in this virtual world. And remember, the future of healthcare could be remoteness, appearing anywhere in the world, seeing a patient or seeing some vital signs, connecting with people. The next step of telemedicine. I've moved that whole phrase on now, and now I've done holograms. I actually got my own holograms using a virtual human, creating my own self using photogrammetry, okay? And then transporting myself to another part of the world. I've given talks as a hologram, as a virtual human. What I'm creating now, by June, is my virtual self with AI interface, so that it can talk like me, react, have empathy, and so that become a new virtual human that could democratize and see many more people in the future. So, as I said before at the beginning, VR is one discipline. Think about everything working together, the AI, the holograms, the avatars, the AR interfaces, all the intelligent mechanisms we have to create this new world that we live in. So, of course, it comes to this in the end. My feeling is that education is a fundamental human right. VR is a solution to help people around the world access world-class education wherever they may need it. I'll leave you with a couple of quotes. The first one is around this quote around the future, okay? Abraham Lincoln describes that the only way to predict the future is to create it yourself. So all of us in this room are the creators of that future here today. That's the first thing. And second, of course, is another quote by William Gibson, who's the American-Canadian author who coined the term cyberspace. He talks about the fact that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. Thank you very much. So thanks, Lisa. I'm happy to take any questions that people might have. If they want, Lorraine, is that possible?
Oh, yes, it is. Absolutely. Again, another big round of applause here. That was just amazing. You're just showing us the future, and it impacts so many of us on a regular basis. I mean, at every level.
Thank you.
So let's turn on the question queue. And if you have a question, you can hit that raise hand button that just showed up over in your lower right-hand corner. And we'd love that. And Darren, you might want to help in the other room if you have a chance, if you're still here. Anyone have a question for Professor Ahmed? So I have 1,000 more. So, yes, we do. Yes, please. Could you just check? Thank you. All right. We have simultaneous events going on here, and we just finished some events in Rumi, so we're just rocking it. So, Dave, you're on the air. How can we help you? Dave? Dave? Do you have a question? No, I guess not. Aha. All right. Who else has a question for Professor Ahmed? All right, Christy. You're on, Christy.
Hi.
Hi. And Christy, if you could hit the raise hand button again.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, and then ask
Hi,
your question.
Christy.
Yay.
Hello.
Hi.
I had a quick question about building out medical realities. Was that done in Unity or Unreal?
No, we're based in Unity. It's all in Unity.
Oh, awesome. And then does it have an integration with LMS, so the exams at the end, for instance?
Yeah. So we've got our own platform for that. But what we want is integrate it into the actual medical schools, and because they will have different kind of platforms to integrate to. We have our own one, which validates the exam, etc. Our bigger mission is to seamlessly put into other systems. So, for example, at Bart's Medical School, they're producing a new platform for immersive learning. We're working with them to figure out what that might look like going forward. So yeah, but from how it's going to each medical school, each university or hospital may require different kind of options available to us. We have a bespoke package which can offer, of course, that does offer some integration.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. We're actually in the process of doing the same thing here at UNC School of Medicine in North Carolina.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful.
Awesome.
What's your role there?
Instructional media producer at our School of Medicine's IT group.
Oh, well, we'd love to talk to you because obviously we have a lot of content that might be suitable for your medical school in terms of OSCE training and other platforms. We'd be happy to share that with you and work out collaboration. We've had interest from Harvard and other medical schools in the US already about our platform, but I'd love to talk to you about it. Please send me a note and I can share my details with you and we'll connect.
And in just a few minutes, if you don't mind, we're going to be asking anyone who would like to head to the social space, and if you'd like to carry on more conversation about it. I love that. All right. Fantastic, Christy. Thank you. And I love, it's just amazing to see where people are taking this technology. It's just, many people feel like they're doing it all by themselves, and you're not. That's one of the goals of this conference is we want to remind you that you're not alone here. You're not the only one doing it. We need to connect because great things happen when we connect like minds. And so I love it. So Davon, you're back. You want to give that a try again? Oh, no audio. Dave? David on? Nope, we're missing audio. It's a great attempt, though. You can reach up to my name tag here in a second, and if you have a question you want to ask, you can click on that. Let me make sure that make that possible. So you can send it to my name tag if you are having troubles with the audio. Anyone else have a question about where this is going in the future? Please hit the raise hand button, and we'll put you on the air so you can figure out what's going on. If, like Dave, you're having a problem, you can just hit my name tag and text it to me as well. Questions? So I want to thank you so much while we're just waiting to see if somebody is texting the message. I really want to thank you for your time and effort and your willingness to share. That is such a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Of course, thanks. Laura, thank you so much.
I love
Thanks
it.
for the opportunity.
Oh, it's been our pleasure, absolutely. All right, so if you all would like another big round of applause and hearts for Professor Ahmed, this is just beautiful. I love this. And we have, so we have about a half an hour break before our next session. We have another one going on right now if you want to hop over to it. And please, we have a whole day filled of 24-hour events here in Engage, here in Altspace, in Engage, in Rumi, and Mozilla Hubs, and I've forgotten one because I've been saying it too many times. Engage, Mozilla Hubs, Rumi, and Altspace. Yes, and Insomnia Space is coming at the end of the week. Just to let you know, before I send you all off to go visiting in the social room, that we are trying to break a record for the most virtual bodies in the same space, Insomnia Space. It is currently 460 some. It's held by High Fidelity. We're going to see if we can break Somnium Space. So please check that out on Saturday. And we have events going round the clock, 24 hours a day until then. And we've already broken records as the biggest, largest, I wasn't planning on this when we started it. It is the largest virtual conference ever in history, and with over 170 speakers, 150 different events, 5 different platforms across 6 days. We were insane. All right, thank you for being a part of this, everyone, and you can head right off over in the back down there and join Professor Ahmed. And thank you so much, everybody. So just, you can head to the social room and hang out. Oh, thank you again. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Laura. Well
If
done.
you could just turn off your megaphone, if you just go back and hit that.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, got it finished.
Yay.
Yeah, good.
All right.
Thank you
And
so
then-
much.
Thank you, and follow me. Do you have time to go into
Yes,
the chat with
yes.
people? Come on.
Yes, of course.
Whoops, I got a menu.
So just to reiterate, anybody who'd like to continue a conversation, we encourage you to go down the stairs to the left around the corner, out the exit near the globe, and go to the social space, as the event is now over. We also encourage that if you don't want to go to the social space, you jump over to the other event going on right now by opening your menu, going to events, and it should pop up right there under this week. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, Karen, thank you. Oh, no, you're kidding. What's not working? No, we have to give you permission to do that. That's a problem. Besides that. Hi, did you have a question?